Bienvenidos y bienvenidos aquí. Today we're going to talk about power.
What happened? It freaks me out.
I tried it in Spanish.
Oh.
I didn't even look that up beforehand.
Is it right?
I think it's pretty close. Welcome and welcome back. You tell us if it is or not. We're going to talk about power today. Not overarching power, but power training and what kind of goes into that in regards to impulse and time and things like that. But I'll let Coach Roger handle that. So how do I get more powerful as if I could?
Well, first thing we need to talk about is what is power. People throw it around. They
sure do. Assholes.
They seem to have a notion of what they expect, but they don't share it with the rest of us. You can use a simple equation and figure this out, but it really is just about how much work you're doing and how much time. What that means is that the power of a given event or skill doesn't necessarily mean it's fast. It is what it is. You did this much over this amount of time. Usually what people mean by power is they want something done explosively or quickly. So we're going to make that assumption and we're going to move forward with it. The discussion that we were having is, just because you do kettlebell swings, are you training power? Ballistics of any type, snatches, push presses. The answer is absolutely not. So we need to figure out what you need to do in order to train power, assuming you're trying to increase power or do more work over a short amount of time. First thing we need to consider is, we did an impulse video, didn't we?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
If not, there'll be one, you'll see.
We need to talk about the impulse. The impulse it's not just force, but it's the force you exert onto the bell by multiplied by the time over which that force is generated. And basically, you don't necessarily have the same power output for given swings. There's something called rate of force development, where you're really going to generate high force quickly. These are the types of swings we want if we want to generate power. And what it really comes down to is just maximal intent. So you'll see some people out there on the interweb, and they're just smiling, doing all kinds of swings, and they're doing 8 sets of 45, and they're just smiling away. Yes, it's a swing, nothing wrong with that. That might have its place, but it's not power. Not in the sense that we're talking about. So
power isn't happy? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, it's power is power.
Okay.
This particular power, type of power that people, I think, want to train, they're not actually training. So we need to consider the impulse. The impulse needs to be quick. You need to generate a lot of force in a very short amount of time, and you want to see that bell get really, really ballistic. Then we want to say, okay, now that we've got our impulse down, rather than a slow, steady impulse, why don't you do a little bit of demo? Why don't you grab that 32?
Oh, okay. Let's get with it. All right, this feels good.
And go to the side or at a 45. So I want you to do some nice casual swings. Nothing crazy. Imagine that I'm having you do a set of 50.
Oh, okay. Here we go.
So form is fine. They're not super crisp. They're not super fast.
I got 50.
Exactly. He's hitting all the points. But this impulse is not going to be composed of a high rate of force production. He's using
50.
He's using a strategy that's going to allow him to produce energy longer. We're going to get into that in a little bit. Now what I want you to do is a set of 5 all out. You got 5 swings, as hard as you can go. And relax.
50.
So we're not going to go too deep into impulse, because either we already did or we will soon.
That was pretty powerful though.
But in the case of the first set, the impulse didn't have a whole lot of it didn't have a high rate of force production. He didn't produce a lot of force quickly. The second set he did. So that's what we mean when we talk about the different types of impulse. The first one is going to be great for endurance, and if you want to do 50 sets or 50 swings and you've got a reason to do that, you're going to need to use an impulse like the first one. The second one is going to train what most people talk about, power. Okay, you'll notice there was a lot of speed involved. And which swings made you more tired?
Power ones.
Okay.
Those 5 I did.
So when we get into energy systems, when you're using power, and this is going to be the second factor we need to consider, is you're going to use what a lot of people will call the alactic system. Okay, we're not getting into the part where we're using sugar. We're just using our first energy system. It's very, very fast. Most people think we've got anywhere between 10 and 12 seconds in this first little range, but beyond that, you have to tap into another energy system, and longer than that, another energy system, et cetera, et cetera. So if we want to train this maximum force production, and we want to generate force very quickly, you need to use this first system, because the other energy systems aren't fast enough to supply the energy he needs. And what would happen is, if he were to keep going, even though I told him to swing as hard as he could, after about 10 to 12 seconds, depending upon his training, he's going to slow down. He's going to have no choice. So those energy systems can't give you the energy you need fast enough in order for you to achieve the objectives. You've got to slow down. So that's the second thing. So we need to have the right kind of impulse if we're training power. So you have to have nasty intentions. You've got to swing as hard as you can, as fast as you can. And then you've got to keep your reps low. So if we're looking at a swing, maybe these are a little faster, but you don't have much more than 5 swings in you. You can do a few more. I've actually done some push band work where I've studied the velocity of my swings, and after about 5, they start to slow down. It's not a lot, but it does start to slow down. So the key is really speed. You want to maintain that maximum velocity. You want to stay within that first energy system. Super important. The last thing you want to consider is rest. When you go all out like that, it takes a long time to recover. And if you don't need a lot to recover, like now I can hear your breath is starting to be a little less pervy. You're starting to settle back down. But in order for you to fully replenish your system, it's going to take some time. We're not going to talk about how much time that's going to take, because it's really going to depend on what you're trying to improve. But if you're trying to generate maximum power, it can take quite a long time. In some cases, more than 5, 8, 10 minutes. It really depends on the person and what you're going for. So the point is that if you want to train power, okay, speed, intensity, all that stuff, you're going to need rest breaks. So to train that, you can get some of the other benefits with different schemes, and we're not touching on any of those. But to train that is going to require some rest. So the 3 things you really need to think about if you're trying to train this: you have to move quickly, which means you have to have the intention to move the bell as fast as possible, and you have to have a bell that you can move as fast as possible. If we actually get into the velocity that he's generating with these different bells, my guess that he's going to be able to train power better with a 32 than with a 48, because the 48 is probably going to slow him down, and he's not going to be able to generate as much velocity or speed which is what he's ultimately training. So bell down if you need to. Don't let the bell speed drop. Generate as much force and as quickly as possible. Okay, that's 1. 2. Do not go above, let's say, just to be safe, 10 seconds. If you go above 10 seconds, you're not using likely the energy system that you're trying to train, because in order to generate power or to generate work quickly, you have to use this system that really taps out after between 10 and 12 seconds. The third thing you need to do is give yourself lots of rest. If you don't give yourself enough rest, it doesn't mean it's a bad method of training. There are some protocols that call for high power output and incomplete rest, but that's not going to be training your absolute power. If you're trying to train absolute power, you've got to keep the reps low, and then you've got to recover. I think that's about it.
Cool. Let's get more power, everybody. And you know what it is. Bells by Iron Revival. Download it and check us out on all the socials. You know what's up. Give a comment if you want to learn something. Let us know. We're happy to help out. Stay strong.
Okay.